Drive along Route 73 today from Mount Independence, and you will see a marker telling about the 22 miles the American soldiers walked to Hubbardton on July 6 and 7, 1777. Although the military road follows through Benson, there is no direct route today. But for you to get there, follow Route 73 to Sudbury and take Route 30 south until you get to Monument Hill Road. At times the country looks like it did in 1777. The battlefield is located on a high hill, barren of any houses, covered with various flowers and home to many birds. It is hard to believe that a bloody battle was fought here over 235 years ago. The monument on the battlefield is a marker for those who fought here in 1777. The Battle of Hubbardton was the only Revolutionary War battle fought completely on Vermont soil. If you look out at the field, try to imagine the battle that was raging on this beautiful Vermont landscape in 1777. This video is more than just a story of the Battle of Hubbardton, but is a story of the people who fought the battle either as soldiers or residents of the town. As you watch this production, try to imagine yourself as a soldier or a resident, and try to think what it was like back in 1777. Our story begins with the Americans holding Fort Ticonderoga on Lake Champlain. This was a tremendous advantage for the American forces, since they could control the boat traffic on the lake, especially with Mount Independence located directly across from Fort Ticonderoga. The position was referred to as the Gibraltar of the Americas. The British understood that if they could cut New England off from the rest of the colonies, it would be difficult for the Americans to carry on the war without supplies or troops. So the British devised a plan called the Campaign of 1777. The Campaign of 77 called for Lieutenant General John Burgoyne to come down from Canada through Lake Champlain to capture Fort Ticonderoga and then march on to Albany. He would meet up with Sir William Howe, who would come up the Hudson to Albany, and Barry St. Leger would come down the Mohawk Valley to Albany. By all three converging on Albany, they thought they could cut New England off from the rest of the colonies by controlling the Hudson and Champlain valleys. Leading British, German, and Native American forces, General Burgoyne started advancing down Lake Champlain to Fort Ticonderoga.
My people are in the best disposition possible. I have no doubt giving a good account of the enemy, should they think it proper to attack us.
Major General Arthur St. Clair defended Ticonderoga with 3,000 men, and eventually was outnumbered by Burgoyne by more than 2-1. On July 1st, Burgoyne landed on the west bank of Lake Champlain, with Major General Baron Frederick Riedessel's Brunswickers on the eastern shore. Burgoyne determined if he could get cannons on top of Sugar Hill, which is now called Mount Defiance, which commanded Fort Ticonderoga, he could force a retreat of the Americans from the fort. St. Clair, believing that it would be impossible for the British to scale Mount Defiance, left it undefended. General Phillips, Burgoyne's second in command, is said to have bragged, "Where a goat can go, a man can go. Where a man can go, he can drag a gun." The British proved St. Clair wrong and began hauling guns up Mount Defiance on July 5. Realizing his mistake, St. Clair had no choice but to abandon Fort Ticonderoga on July 6th. Escaping over the floating bridge between Fort Ticonderoga and Mount Independence, the Americans withdrew along the old military road, leading south to Hubbardton and then to Castleton.
At first dawn of light, 3 deserters came in and informed the enemy were retreating the other side of Mount Independence. The general, without loss of time, made acquaintance with it, and the pickets of the army were ordered to march and take possession of the garrison and hoist the king's colors, which was immediately done. Lieutenant Digby.
St. Clair's objective was to reach Castleton before swinging west to Skenesborough. The soldiers marched through the night from Mount Independence to Hubbardton. The Americans paused at Hubbardton to allow Colonel Ebenezer Francis, 11th Massachusetts, which was serving as the rear guard, to arrive. Already on the battlefield were Colonel Seth Warner and the Green Mountain Boys. St. Clair augmented Warner's forces with Colonel Nathan Hale's 2nd New Hampshire. St. Clair then left with his army to Castleton. After Francis arrived, Warner elected to stay at Hubbardton, knowing that the men were exhausted from the retreat march. Knowing that St. Clair had departed Ticonderoga, Brigadier General Simon Fraser pursued the retreating Americans. Fraser brought with him light infantry, grenadiers, and elements of the 24th Foot. He was also followed by Redizel. They made camp on the way to Hubbardton at Lacey's Camp and decided to march at 3 a.m. The British achieved a measure of surprise, arriving at the American camp at 5 a.m. at Sucker Brook. Charging at the American pickets, they pushed Hale's disorganized men who were cooking breakfast. Warner and Francis, realizing what was happening, assumed a powerful position between the two hills. They were protected by wooded terrain, which allowed them to give heavy resistance against Fraser's troops.
Day after as fatiguing a march as ever known, we arrived at a town called Hubbardton, 22 miles from the Mount. The main body was on about 4 miles. Supped this night with Colonel Francis on chocolate. Encampment in the woods this night. Moses Greenleaf.
I was boiling chocolate and carried it down the road coming in from Mount Independence. When one of our men jumped up and cocked his gun to fire, they didn't let him fire. Then I turned to see what he was going to shoot at, and I saw the enemy forming about 15 rods from us. Joseph Byrd.
In the morning, a heavy fire in the rear for some time, near an hour a heavy battle. But as the rear consisted of a feeble part of the army, they, after an obstinate resistance, were obliged to give way to superior numbers. Jeduthan Baldwin.
We were ordered to form on the east side of the log fence. When we got over the fence, the rise of the land shut out the British from our sight. We saw them attack our right. We drove them back twice by cutting them down so fast we didn't leave log fence or charge them. The action began on our right, which soon gave way. They couldn't drive us from the fence until they charged us. I was near the center, opposite the west road under Colonel Francis. Hale commanded our right. We fought before they drove us till I had fired nearly 20 cartridges. When I got over a hedge, I took a tree and waited for them to come within shot. We fought through the woods all the way to the ridge of Pittsford Mountain, popping away from behind trees. Joseph Byrd. I, Ebenezer Fletcher, enlisted into the Continental Army in Captain Carr's company in Colonel Nathan Hale's regiment as a fifer, and joined the army at Fort Ticonderoga under the command of General St. Clair in the spring of 1777, at which place I was stationed till the retreat of the army of the 6th of July following. Having just recovered from measles and not being able to march with the main body, I fell in the rear. The morning after our retreat, orders came very early for the troops to refresh and be ready for marching. Some were eating, some were cooking, and all in a very unfit posture for battle. Just as the sun rose, there was a cry, "The enemy are upon us!" Looking around, I saw the enemy in line of battle. Orders came to lay down our packs and be ready for action. Fire instantly began. We but a few in number compared to the enemy. At the commencement of the battle, many of our party retreated back into the woods. Captain Carr came up and says, "My lads, advance! We shall beat them yet!" A few of us followed him in view of the enemy. Every man was trying to secure himself behind girdled trees which were standing on the place of action. I made my shelter for myself and discharged my piece. Having loaded again and taken aim, my piece misfired. I brought the same a second time to my face, but before I had time to discharge it, I received a musket ball in the small of my back. My uncle Daniel Foster, standing but little distance from me, I made out to crawl to him and spoke to him. He and another man lifted me and carried me back some distance and laid me down behind a large tree, where was another man crying out most bitterly with a grievous wound. By this time, I had bled so freely I was weak and faint. Ebenezer Fletcher.
Recognizing the line was reinforced by what was left of Hale's regiment, with the enemy firing from behind the fence and his men taking increasing losses, Fraser attempted to turn Warner's left flank and cut off the Americans' line of retreat. Outnumbered, this maneuver required him exposing his own left, and the Colonials fell on the exposed British left. As this assault was gaining ground, Redizel arrived on the field with a mixed force of Jaegers, Grenadiers, and light infantry, along with a band of musicians.
Numbers fell on both sides, among them ours, the brave and ever-to-be-lamented Colonel Francis, who fought bravely to the last. He first received a ball through his right arm, still was continued at the head of our troops till he received the fatal wound. Moses Greenleaf.
On Colonel Francis falling, who was their second in command, they did not stand long. I saw him fall, and his appearance caused me to remark his figure, which was fine and even. At the time made me regard him with attention, Lieutenant Digby.
While Riedisel moved to support Fraser, the former moved to attack the American center. When both flanks started to fall apart, Warner ordered his troops to retreat. The Americans took to the woods to reunite later at Manchester. Many Americans were captured, including Hale. The Battle of Hubbardton cost the American rear guard 41 killed, 96 wounded, and 224 captured. British and German losses totaled around 60 killed and 148 wounded. The Americans successfully accomplished their mission by allowing St. Clair to retreat. The losses of the British and German troops forced Fraser to end pursuit of the Americans. The British had been told that the colonials would not fight, but would flee at the sight of the British troops. The Americans would get their revenge at the Battle of Bennington and ultimately the surrender of Burgoyne at Saratoga on October 17th.
The numbers they have killed cannot be easily asserted, as great many fell in the pursuit, which continued some distance from the field of action. The action lasted nearly 3 hours before they attempted retreating with great loss. We had nearly 200 killed and wounded. Major Grant, 24th Regiment, who had the advance guard, was the first to fall. We had 2 other majors wounded, which were all we had with us. Lieutenant Digby.
The troops, British and German, behaved well on this occasion. Unfortunately, we gained nothing but honor. The immediate movements of the Army were encumbered, or rather prevented, it being absolutely necessary to detain this detachment as a cover for the wounded until they can be removed to Ticonderoga. James Murray Haddon.
Some people say they have seen a ghost dressed as Colonel Francis looking over the battlefield at various times. One can only imagine, if it is Colonel Francis, that he would be proud that this battle, which was considered a defeat in 18th century military terms, was really a rearguard action which slowed the movement of Burgoyne's army, which eventually led to his defeat at Saratoga, and eventually, with the aid of the French, the British defeat at Yorktown.
I am Amos Churchill, and July 7th, 1859 is very special. The people of Hubbardton and nearby towns are dedicating a dignified marble monument to honor the only Revolutionary War battle fought in Vermont. The American General Horatio Gates had ordered a road be built through here to reach Mount Independence, the new American fortification on Lake Champlain. In June 1777, more soldiers were heading to Mount Independence, telling my grandfather that the British were coming on the lake from Canada and to be prepared for something big to happen. It was getting light the morning of July 7th when Colonel Seth Warner sent a detachment of soldiers to warn grandfather and other townspeople of the danger. Grandmother had guided all the women and children in the family back to Sheffield, Massachusetts with only 2 horses. It was 350 miles. The British made her angry. They had wounded her horse when the family were fleeing from the battle, and she exclaimed, "I wish I had a gun. I would give them what they want." It is the fervent hope of all assembled here that this will be an enduring monument, showing that a grateful posterity knows how to honor the memory of its historic ancestors.
My name is Jeff Monder. I'm with Benjamin Whitcomb's Independent Corps of Rangers. I'm from Shrewsbury, Vermont. One of the things that's really special about this site is that as reenactors, we try to recreate a time. And this place is so special because when you look out, especially from the hilltop, and you look out at the landscape all around us, it looks very much like what we could imagine somebody from the time might have seen, because there's very little sign of human habitation out here, and the hills are solid green, and it's just a beautiful site. And so we honor the people that served here, that died here, and we get to have a unique experience at the site.
Thank you. I think get Dave over here.
Well, my name is Corporal Eric Smith. I'm a corporal with the 64th Regiment of Foot Light Infantry Company.
I'm Brennan Smith, same company. I'm a private.
And we come out to this site every year because the Hubbardton Battlefield Association, the Site Association, has done such a wonderful job of maintaining this site. It is one of the best sites that we do all year. I look forward to this coming here every year. And I love supporting the site because they've done such a wonderful job preserving this. I want to see this here available for folks forever. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Hubbardton was an important battle in my view because it was an outstanding rearguard action by the Americans. Ultimately, the British couldn't catch the main force, and it was the downfall of the British who couldn't win. Although they did take the field at the end.
My name is Nils Erickson, live in Shrewsbury, 25th Massachusetts Regiment. One of the most important things, if you will, about Hubbardton is we're on hallowed ground. Men fought and died here. It's one of the few battlefields that's still in its original condition. Saratoga National Battlefield is also the same, but others just don't exist anymore. And that makes it very, very important for us to put all this work into reenacting and getting the proper clothes and the proper gear to make sure we recreate the battle as well as we can.
Hi, my name is Christy Devlin, and I'm from Maidstone, Vermont, just across the Guildhall border. I really liked the Hubbardton event because it was so authentic. The tents and the clothing was so authentic, and I really liked the battle.
I'm Bob Delisle from the 25th Massachusetts. My Hubbardton is special to me. I've been going to this battle since the 200th anniversary. I've also fought on both sides. I was 64th at that time with a British regiment. It's interesting to see how things have changed over time.
My name is Richard Tucker. I portray Coupon Company, Headquarters, 2nd New Hampshire Regiment. And I just love coming here.